What is it that you guys do?
We hold the UN accountable, fight dictatorships, fight anti-Semites, keeps us pretty busy.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you pick what exactly to do? Because from that list, even just the name UN Watch, there's a lot of people that watch Rebel News in Australia and Canada that can probably name to you 10 things in the last week that the UN has gotten wrong. So how do you pick what you focus in on?
Well, we try to pick the most pressing items. If it's, Iran being elected to the UN Women's Rights Commission that happened a couple of years ago, Saudi being the chair of that entity last year, the UN's coddling of dictators. We try to pick priority, but you're right, it is a target-rich environment if your job is to fight evil and injustice at the UN, especially at its human rights bodies, which is paradoxical, but that's the way it is.
So the UN rapporteur, she's come to Australia, she's had the red carpet welcome on our national TV. She's basically given a platform of authority. Now, you did some investigations that found, what did you find?
Well, we found that she did not tell the truth. She said that she went on a UN-funded trip, entirely funded by the UN. It was a bit odd because the Australian Foreign Ministry, while she was there, had put out information that it was not an official UN visit. So why would the UN pay for it? Well, it turns out the UN said they did pay for it. About a year later, the UN said they did pay for it. But at the same time, a UN committee investigated, actually of her own peers, called the Coordination Committee of her own peers, other UN rapporteurs, and found that she did take funds from external groups. And we know the groups because the Australian Friends of Palestine Association, AFOPA, said that they sponsored her visit. And a UN committee confirmed that her trips within Australia and within New Zealand were funded by external groups. This group, AFOPA, had praised Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind of the Hamas October 7th attacks, one of the most murderous, evil terrorists in the world, was praised by the group that funded her travel within Australia and New Zealand, as confirmed by her own peers, contrary to what she had said.
And so what are you doing to hold her and the UN accountable for that?
Well, we filed complaints with the United Nations Secretary General. We filed complaints with member states. Several of them opposed her reappointment. By virtue of their opposition to a reappointment, there should have been a vote. The UN ignored the objections that were filed in March of 2025. And in April, they announced that she was automatically reappointed. Without a vote, she was automatically reappointed. This was contrary to the UN's own fundamental rules that say there is no automatic reappointment if there are objections. So even though we submitted the evidence, several countries objected. On the record, the UN trampled its own rules and regulations, and the result is that legally, she was never legally reappointed. There was never a vote. They said it was automatic, but under their own rules, there is no automatic reappointment if there is opposition. So on the basis of her corruption, on the basis of her lies, objections were filed, and we take the position legally, and any lawyer who looks at the file would have to agree that her term ended on April 2025.
So if it didn't...
And therefore she doesn't have immunity, and she's being sued in the United States for defamation, and the UN said that she has immunity, can't sue her. But the US State Department, I believe, will look at our legal memo that we've published on our website, unwatch.org, and I believe the State Department will tell the US federal court that she can be sued and held accountable. And as you may know, the United States government sanctioned her despite her claims to immunity. She said her life has been ruined. She can't access her bank accounts. She can't use a credit card. She can't reserve a hotel room. No one can send her a payment. People don't want to talk to her because she's been sanctioned. And that's the result of our exposing her crimes and corruption.
Is she the problem or just a symptom of the problem, a greater problem at the UN?
She is a symptom of a larger problem, but she is the most pernicious supporter of terrorism at the United Nations. There is a rogue situation where other UN officials are employees and they have to answer to someone, and there's some level of discipline. She's what's called a UN rapporteur, which is basically a gap in accountability because she is not an employee, she's not paid by the UN, and she's basically accountable to the 47 member states of the Human Rights Council who don't do a damn thing. So she's basically unaccountable, tweeting every 5 minutes lies and propaganda by Hamas, by Iran. And so she is a major problem, but indeed, as you said, it's reflective of a larger culture of coddling dictators and terrorists at the United Nations.
So a lot of people would ask the question, why do we have the UN? Should it not be disbanded, or should we, at least as Australia or America, should we not just the UN exit, leave the UN?
Maybe, but the question is, who's going to do it? So far, no one. Even Donald Trump, who's created his own Board of Peace, maybe that'll be a rival to the UN. People at the UN are getting very nervous, fear that the Board of Peace might become a rival. But Donald Trump has not said he's leaving the UN. Even if he were to do it, who would join him? Maybe Milei of Argentina, maybe one or two other presidents you can think of. But Canada, the UK, France, Australia, they're not going anywhere. So the UN is there to stay, sadly, and we have to demand that our governments do the minimum to fight the world's worst dictatorships, terrorist regimes, radical Islamists who subvert what the UN was founded to be.
And finally, for people who don't understand the behemoth of the UN, how many employees do they have approximately? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't, but we're talking, if you add up all the different agencies, specialized agencies, many tens of thousands. UNRWA alone, the UN agency that supports Hamas terrorism, funded by our tax money, Australian tax money, Canadian tax money, and has Hamas terror chiefs running their school system in Gaza, in Lebanon. That agency alone has 30,000 employees. So imagine if you had all the employees in Geneva and New York and those working in agencies and relief points, you're talking many tens of thousands.
Ezra Levant here, along with Avi Yamini. I'm in Jerusalem for an international conference of leaders against anti-Semitism. To follow all of our journalism, go to rebelnews.com.